Hey y'all, welcome back to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible Study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Holy Comforter, and I have some thoughts and reflections for you about the gospel lesson for this upcoming Sunday, which is Luke chapter 2, verses 22 through 40. So this Sunday, February 2nd, it's not only Super Bowl Sunday, it's the feast of the presentation of our Lord Jesus Christ in the temple, also known as Candlemas. Kind of like Christmas. So Candlemas as in Candlemas. There are some traditions in which Christians, churches bless candles on this day. It's 40 days after Christmas. We made it. So think of this as the end of the birth narrative of our Lord Jesus Christ. Now that narrative, of course, starts March 25th with the Annunciation, which is exactly 9 months before Christmas, the birth of Jesus, and then we have the presentation here 40 days after his birth in the temple. So as you read Luke chapter 2, verses 22 through 40, you'll read, of course, this story of Mary and Joseph presenting the baby Jesus in the temple. It's kind of interesting. We could really go deep on this. And I can commend to you some other resources, especially workingpreacher.org.com, one of those, Working Preacher. They have some great commentaries written on this. It's interesting, a few of the things going on, that part of it is you present a firstborn to God, it's sort of in thanksgiving, in remembrance of, in memorial of all the firstborn who were saved on that night of the Passover during the 10 plagues in Egypt. So this has resonances with Exodus and that whole narrative as well. Now, this is also one of those places where the preacher has such a rich text and so many things going on that we have to choose just one thing to talk about. And I want to talk about the Song of Simeon. If you say evening prayer in the Episcopal Church, you will know the Song of Simeon, the Nunc Dimittis. It's one of these great texts that we sing or that we say at evening prayer. Simeon takes the baby Jesus in his arms and says, "Master, now you are dismissing your servant in peace according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people Israel." Saying that this thing that I'm holding, this baby, this child, this Jesus is that. It goes on, verse 33. "And the child's father and mother were amazed at what was being said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to his mother Mary, 'This child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be opposed, so that the inner thoughts of many will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too.'" And a sword will pierce your own soul too. That's where I want to take off from. Oftentimes that's read as Mary's anguish at seeing Jesus crucified, at seeing Jesus dying and being laid in the tomb. Now, of course, I would imagine Mary had great anguish at watching the death of her son and his burial. But I actually don't think that's what Simeon is talking about here. Throughout the Old Testament, there are some places, especially in Ezekiel, where a sword piercing is not so much about this anguish or being cut or driven through with a sword. It's about a sign of judgment, like a decision. Like you're being chopped and you have to make that decision one way or another. It's more of a discriminating sword, if you will. I think that's exactly what Simeon here is talking about, right? "So that the inner thoughts of many will be revealed. This child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel." And Mary, that's going to happen in your own soul too. I think part of what is going to happen, Simeon is saying, is that you, Mary, are going to have to decide, are you this boy's mother, or will you also be his follower? Think about that. That Mary, of course, we venerate her, of course, and rightfully so, as the mother of God, the one who bears Christ. But we also know that she later on becomes his disciple. We know that in that great prayer meeting before Pentecost, Mary is there counted with the other disciples and the apostles. So it's important to know then that Mary becomes a follower of Jesus. I think that's what Simeon is saying. Mary, will you just be his mother, or will you be something more? And I think that's part of why the church also venerates her. It's because, not just because she bore Jesus for us, but because she followed Jesus. That day of decision then, of course, comes for each of us, and a sword pierces our own soul. Those moments throughout the day that we have to make the decision. Am I going to follow Jesus or am I not? That sword is piercing our own soul too. So I want you to think about that this week, especially as you come up on Super Bowl Sunday. It's a rich time to think about this. Of course, in sports, there are lots of fans. There are lots of fair weather fans. But when the going gets tough, some people back away. And this question is then going to be raised to us. We could think of it in this sort of context too. Is that, well, are you going to stick with your team even when they're losing? Even when Jesus is hanging there upon the cross? Will you still be his follower? Or will you stand at a distance and just maybe be a fan or an admirer? So obviously lots of stuff then to wrestle with, but that's what I'm wrestling with this week, about a sword piercing our own soul too. God bless each of you. Would love to hear from you in the comments. You can also send me an email, jimmy@holycomforterspring.org, and a happy, blessed Candlemas to each of you.